Okay, so how can you animate weapons? I'm going to base this tutorial off of what I've learned and what I've seen. So, how can you animate weapons and how can you make it look good? So, if you've seen my previous tutorials, you know I use something called Moon Animator, which is a Roblox plugin good for animating. Very efficient. I like it. Although not as good as Blender, which is kind of complicated to use currently for me, and then not as bad as the current Roblox animation plugin, like their own custom-made one. This is like in the in-between. But honestly, I can't say that the Roblox animation original plugin isn't super bad. I just don't like it. So, what you want to start off doing first? You want to make a first pose for the animation. So, just put whatever together. Alright, so once you've made your first pose for the weapon, depending on the type of animation you want to make, you'll either want to make it super fast, which making the keyframes super close together, or you want to make the keyframes partially far so it has a decent speed relating to the animation you're making. I'm making a reload animation, so most of the keyframes that will be relating to the hand will be about 15 to 30 milliseconds long. The milliseconds are the numbers here, and a whole second would be from 1 to 60. It tells you the amount of seconds up here, as you should see where my mouse cursor is. So doing a reload animation, since I'm animating RPG, my first frame would be that the missile has to be off the gun, or off the receiver, I think it's called, or just the main part. So yeah, you have your first pose, and then you want to start with, I would say about for a full arm movement, you just want to pose at about 12-15 seconds. And that first animation will either be character dropping the mag, character grabbing the mag and beginning to remove it, or character grabbing the mag, the second mag and dropping the first one. Depends on how you want to animate. So first thing my character is doing is grabbing the rocket, so that would be about 12 seconds. And from there you want to test your animation by pressing space in Moon Animator. If it's too fast, just readjust keyframes. Then you want to select your rig so that your rig is selected. You'll know when your rig is selected if it's glowing more of, I would say, so that your rig is like active. So you have your rig selected, then you will press either this button here to toggle the ghost rig, or you press B for a shortcut. This will appear. Then, if you move the limb, the original placement of that keyframe will appear. So I would say, if you're going to do from this pose, and it goes over to the next pose, which comes the rocket. In between that animation, you want to open the ghost rig and change the position of the arm and other weapons such as you go along. As you see, my animation is a little fast in some parts, and also it will clip in other areas, so I'd recommend moving keyframes and other things around. And here you may want to use easings, because they will help a lot more with animation. But for the sake of practicing first with linear, which is posing, I would just try to practice perfecting animation starting with linear and then using easings in the future. Then, when the character grabs the mag or whatever is the ammunition for the gun, I would recommend doing about 5 to 10 milliseconds before they proceed to move the ammunition into the gun. So, because they're trying to get a hand grip for the explosive or the ammunition and such. They're just trying to get a grip, so it will take a few milliseconds. So you'll want to copy and paste keyframes, and copy and pasting is like the buttons that you use for the keybinds that you use for it are different. So instead of Control C and Control V to paste, it is Shift C and Shift V. So Shift C, you hold left click, you drag, select Shift, and then press C, copy C keyframes, press Shift and then V, and it will paste your keyframe. So yeah, the Shift and Control are just different so that you can do copy and pasting outside of the Moon Animator if you need to, but then you can also mess around with it in Moon Animator as well, so it's not as so keybinds don't get broken down and such. So that, and then move the. I'd recommend using the ghost rigs for moving just mostly arm animations. I'd recommend moving the keyframes around. That's very useful for that. Then, if you see next to my mouse cursor, you'll see some number position, some numbers next to it, like negative 0.147. I'm going to assume that is the position of the part that you have selected. So my part is currently 0.017, and then you'll also notice that there is something below that called the PRS, which is which is R position. If you click that, pressing R will change the change whether you want to rotate or whether you want to move the part. And the part needs to be a rig, so that it can move like this properly. Unless you're animating it through Keyframe, I don't know how that works. Now, if you press Y, Y changes something called world and local. Local is where like the sides of the part are facing, so you'll see here as like the arrows are going off all sides of the rectangle for the arm. But if you do world, it will go in accordance with the entire world base plate. So it will be the XYZ coordinates, or XYZ like positions. So straight here, straight and up and down. And this is just, so yeah, local is for the part itself, and then world is for the whole world. So it follows the the graph. I don't know. Here we go. So if you have this square, you'll understand what I mean. The X, Y, and Z. World follows this specific graph. So, and then local follows its own shape. When you're moving two parts, you will want to use world, as local will change the positions in a way you don't want them to. And before, I've had issues with that, so what you want to do is use world. So you select both parts by holding control and clicking both parts. Although it may not look selected, if it's selected up in the little animator here, then it's been selected, so it's glowing left arm missile. Then press Y and world, and it'll move both the parts like so. Use the ghost rig to make rotations and such, so that it doesn't look so cut off. And by now, you should have a pretty basic animation. You can also do the same thing with rotation, which helps rotate it in the same spot. Although the, let's say the mag or such will not stay into the position of the hand you want it in, you can just readjust it so it's not as annoying. Because if you rotate it on local, it will spin them in. Sometimes it usually spins them in opposite directions, which is very annoying to deal with, so I'd recommend doing it in world. Then you would want to position the next position of the mag, or explosive, and whatever the main ammunition is, going into the barrel or going into the mag slot, whatever gun you're using. For detail, what you want to start off with is that before it goes in, not all humans are perfect. And I say not all of them because some are good at inserting mags into guns or whatever, so they'll get it in first time. But for some, if you want a good detail to your animation, you'll want to like move it so it looks like it's hitting the other sides of the gun. So adjust some keyframes, like here it's out, then it hits it a little bit, it slides down, and then, oh yeah, they're dropping it, sort of. And mainly, you we just want to get the posing before you play the animations, so you can adjust your keyframes accordingly. And there's something called add default keyframe is what it looks like before you started the animation, which will really help in a lot of situations like trying to insert mags and such. So yeah, position your keyframes accordingly. So you see how when he bumps it, the missile into the barrel, it's very slow. All you really need to do is just select the parts and change their animation, or change their keyframe position so that it's faster. And much nicer. So now that you have the rocket animation in place, or the load animation in place, you would want to animate the right arm, but for that, you need to get the left arm back into position. So use the copy and paste method, and then use Ghost Rig to change that accordingly. When you're moving a limb by itself, I'd recommend you use local, but when you're moving two parts, use the world movement and rotation. Now, although it looks all fancy with the left arm, you want to animate the right arm because it just looks too still, right? So what you want to start off with is how the physics of the object works. It's not too difficult. Weapon, heavy weapon, moving this way. Object, physics stuff. So when he drops his hand here to grab the missile, I would recommend using Ghost Rig for this, but basically weapon drops slightly because it is losing some support from the arm, so it's going to fall slightly faster. Now, due to some rigging problems, the missile will move along with it. But if you don't make super major changes, then the animation of grabbing the mag or ammunition won't be too off and look too weird. So and I would recommend for animations like pulling down, pulling up, that you try to make some sort of bounce. So like say you're going forward here, and then after that you bounce here, and then you bounce back. But it depends on what's happening. So say the missile is scraping the barrel downwards, the gun would start going down. And say you were inserting a mag through a bottom with a gun of some sort, like the mag's going through the bottom or through the back. When you're putting it in, it will cause the gun to shake a bit because it's trying to connect. So it's going to cause the gun to shake a little bit. Depending on how you want to put the keyframes, it can like wiggle a little bit, wiggle a lot. Just not make it not too intense. Although for some positions, like when say how the missile is going into the gun, you may want to move some right arm positions so that it matches. So it's not too, doesn't look like everything's moving in a completely different way from each other, like the left arm and the right arm moving with each other. So that like, say, might have explained this wrong, but say this is moving like this, you'd want to do the same thing with the right arm. You want to have it move together. So for that, you would just use the world movement type. So yeah, you have an animation like that with complete mirror. So yeah, the basics of what you need for an animation for weapons like these, or any kind of weapon you want to animate that include a mag. Just basic. First, you need posing. So one, and pose. Posing like, oh yeah, missile is about to go in. Missile goes in, halfway. Then missile go in again. You don't need to worry about the rotation of the arm going under while doing basic posing. You just need to get the poses. It will look obviously terrible, lots of clipping, like how this hand clips through here, but it'd be a lot more worse. But once you start trying to actually work on it after basic posing it, after making a basic pose, the animation, start like cleaning it up. So from here, how earlier you saw in the video, the arm just teleported, not teleported, but just went from point A to point B. You start working on it a little bit, now it rotates. The arm rotates downward and grabs the missile. And you'll also see that after I completed the left arm works, I had animated the right arm following what the left arm has done. So that's why I like starting off with doing the left arm first, then doing the right arm shaking in physics after. And you don't want, and this is an old habit of mine, but whenever there's long keyframes, like, oh yeah, nothing's happening with the gun for a while, I'd recommend you sway the gun around slowly, not shake it like in like different angles. That was an old thing I used to do, and it did not really, it did not stick with me. So you just follow the physics of what is happening, like weight, guns going down because it is lost support from the left arm, so it's going down, and the character starts to bring it back up again so that the missile can be loaded. The missile is about to go in. It's bent here, scrapes it, so it forces it to go down. Pulls that out again, so the main part will the RPG receiver will pull back, ready to insert the missile again. Then when it pushes in, it's heavier, so it will force a lot of physics into pulling it back. And then, since it's lost support from the left arm again, after the left arm tries to go under to grab the missile, the weight will change, and then it grabs the missile again and pulls back. And then when it lifts up into its default position, I tend to do this, where it will, when it's moving from one position to the other, from here back to here, I add a in between lean forward so that it does things like, so it's a little bit better. Sometimes too many keyframes is a bad thing, I would say. But if you put the right amount of keyframes that just make your animation look good, like smoothed out. So I'd recommend using Ghost Rig a lot, working with the left arm first and the magazine, then animating with your right arm. Then animating the right arm, whatever gun's holding, or whatever arm's holding the weapon, the main weapon receiver. And keep playing your animation, because if you want specific realism, you'll see a lot of flaws within it. Because I bet you there's a good amount of animators watching this that can be like, yeah, there are going to be a lot of flaws in this. Like, I see a lot of flaws in your animation right now, like this or that. Like, yeah, I only have like 5 months of experience. But if you get the basics, you keep practicing that over and over again, you get it better. Practice makes better, not perfect. You hear a lot of people saying practice makes perfect. It just makes better. It will eventually make perfect. It just makes better for now. Yeah, see? It looks nice just with linear. You'll see all those animators that do the fancy stuff like, oh yeah, I use easings like quad and sine, which are practically the same thing, but one of them's, I think, slower than the other. Say the quad or sine, I can't remember. But yeah, I'd recommend using in, out, and in, out. Don't use out, in unless you're doing it for something very specific, but it's kind of like ugly when you do out, in for some things, but some animators can disagree on me with that, depending on their staff. But see, it just takes linear and you can do stuff like this. So yeah, this basic stuff. And then you also need to know how the gun works. If you don't know how the gun works, then search it up. Oh, does the bolt lock back on an AK-47? No, it doesn't. Please don't make that. AK-47s don't have a catch lock for the slide, or for the charging handle, so if I ever see that, that's going in a cursed playlist, because that is no. But yeah, just learn how the gun works when you're animating it, unless it's a custom gun that you've made and it uses specific parts. Like, oh yeah, if you've ever played Valorant before, there is a gun in the rifle section, and it uses parts of it uses an AK-47 charging handle, and and they got that part right, like the way it doesn't lock back, because it's an AK variant, along with the way the mag is taken out. So yeah, you just need to learn how your gun works. Even though it's custom made, it would still take references from real gun parts, unless you're going with just rail guns, then just lasers, rail guns, futuristic stuff, just like absolutely no relation to modern warfare whatsoever. Then just figure out how the modeler made it, and just ask them how that works. Because more likely, if anything, if you're trapped with that, with if you're probably going to be trapped working with a group that makes gun models a specific way, you have to work with that way. But just learn how the gun works, depending on what kind of gun it is, what it uses. I like guns, so I researched them ish. Not really. I know like the basics because I watched some videos on how does the gun work and stuff like that. So I know some parts. So it helps me with my animations, like this rocket. I've seen enough video animations or gameplays and other things of rockets where it doesn't always go in first time. And I've seen enough animations, like YouTubers that make animations, like as I feel like he's pretty well known, Falco Blockland. He pulled up on view model channels and like stuff on like gun view models for animating. That kind of stuff was cool. So I noticed a lot of people, or it might be just my recommendations, have been getting into 3D animation. I personally like view modeling. I'm just not great at it. It just looks weird to me. So I do third-person animations, which look nice like this. But if you watch enough videos on a gun, and if you see some similarities, like the way they load it, or the way it tilts, or how it's inserted and such. Also, I've been told this a lot, like, be careful when you use the R6 model specifically. They're like, oh yeah, be careful with dislocation, but I don't understand how you can animate a gun without dislocating their arm, so you can actually do proper movements. But honestly, it's up to them. But you just need to follow 3 basic steps. I'm going to put it on the screen here. Alright, so number 1, basic posing. Number 1 is basic posing. You want that always. Number 2 is work with basic detail. So work with basic detail, like as I said, just do the, just work a bunch on the left arm and moving the magazine, the ammunition, the whatever. And then number 3, start work on advanced details. So stuff like animating the weight look of the right arm. Maybe doing a if you're doing a cinematic, you could go for using Ghost Ray to place the legs in certain areas. So like they're laying down and they're shaking around a lot because it's like a battlefield. Using their head, looking at the ammunition, moving it around on their weights and such. You can work on advanced details like that, or you just need to animate the right arm moving around, or if you have a gun modeled with enough detail, like, oh yeah, there's something called the mag release on a AR type weapon. Like, it's what catches your mag to keep your mag into your gun. People animate little bits like that, like little details in a gun that obviously big companies would have to focus on, like those little details, like Modern Warfare. Like recently, they've had like in their gun animations, you just search up like tiny little details. They get that right. I've noticed that some animators get like there's some details about guns that are wrong, and then some that get it right. That's why I said you need to research how a gun works. So you need to research the advanced details. So, going over it again. Basic posing. Just get what you need. Put it down. Understand what you want to make. Basic detail. Stuff like moving the arm with the magazine. Basic stuff like that. Make sure it has good detail, but it's not like, you're not just working at everything at once. Then you work on the advanced detail. Depending on what you're making, game animation, cinematic animation, you can work on all the leg movements, right arm, gun weight movements, gun tiny details and stuff, and head movement. You just do that. And once you finish all of those, if you still don't like your animation, just keep looking at the flaws, look at video examples, look at other people who've made animations with weapons similar to that. Look at real life videos of people actually using guns. You'll see a lot of that now. It's good. Use that as a reference. Oh well, you're probably not going to see someone firing an RPG for fun unless it's unless they got very specific permission, because I don't know if you're allowed to shoot explosives wherever. But just take a look at examples, and your animations will look good.